A good Wednesday morning, Quad Cities. It is July 9th, and it is time for Ask Andrew. And you get me all to yourself today. That time of year when vacations are kicking in. So Peter Warner will be filling in for Chief Meteorologist James Zahara this evening. And actually, Meteorologist Morgan Strackbine will be joining me a little bit later this evening for an event in Geneseo with the Beast. So yeah, we get the solo show today. That doesn't mean that we're going to let off the gas pedal one bit. We are still going to give you some really cool content to talk about. And of course, as we near the end of our time here, we'll also give you ample time to submit your weather-related questions. We had some really good ones this week during GMQC that we went over. Of course, there's been a lot of weather to talk about. We've had some heavy rain here, but there have also been some devastating floods in other parts of the country, including yesterday in Chicago saw some flash flooding. So we'll get to all of that in just a moment. If you're new, welcome aboard. We do this every single Wednesday right here on the A+ app, and we also stream this on our social media channels too. So if you have a weather-related question, what's the best way to get it to us here? It's this right here. Grab your smartphone or any kind of phone that sends text messages and send that weather-related question to 309-304-0888. 309-304-0888. And for the folks in the back, 309-304-0888. We'll put that number at the bottom of your screen too, just in case you need a reminder as we go throughout today's episode. I want to thank you again for joining us. What a busy week of weather. We've seen some isolated showers and thunderstorms, and some of those have really put down some heavy rains, including the last couple of days. Many hometowns picking up more than an inch if you got under one of those. Today, I think we're going to take a little bit of a break from that more widespread activity. I think it's a little bit more isolated in nature. So we'll start with the forecast first, then we'll dive into the two questions we had this week, and then I'll take your questions and we'll get those answered here on this Wednesday morning. Our big story as we were kicking off your Wednesday was the fog. We had so much of it. It was so dense. We actually had to hoist up a weather impact alert earlier this morning. That is all since expired. We've cleared that out, and the fog is also cleared out too. You got a good view there of the Mississippi River in Clinton. We also now have nearly full visibility in Prophetstown. If you were watching us earlier this morning, we could not even see the parts of the grain elevator that aren't that far away from this camera. The fog was that thick this morning. Visibility continues to improve, so that's some good news here. You can see the worst of that visibility now way off to the east along the I-39 corridor near DeKalb and Rochelle. The rest of us quickly getting full visibility, and I think we're going to have a really, really nice day ahead of us. I kind of want to go to the visible satellite because that will show the story that there are a couple of clouds making their way in from the northwest. And some of these clouds, they are a little bit on the taller side. There's nothing on radar with these, but this tells me that our atmosphere has a couple of disturbances working through, and one or two of these, as they traverse our region this afternoon, could bubble up a stray shower thunderstorm. Just like what we've seen the last couple of days, the coverage will be limited, it will be isolated in nature, and most of it will be between 2 and 6 o'clock this afternoon. You can see some of those clouds actually on our eagle eye. This is our Moline eagle eye with a temperature of 80 degrees outside. It feels like 83. We're still going to be dealing with humidity today. We're the warm spot with 80 along with Tipton. And as I take you through future track here going into the afternoon, you're going to see a couple of these little blips appear right there. There's that stray shower thunderstorm chance as we get into the afternoon and early evening. But like we've seen the last several days, the sun sets, those showers and thunderstorms collapse, and then things quiet down tonight. Now, with winds coming out of the north and then northeast overnight, I do not think we're going to have any fog to deal with tomorrow morning. That should bring in some drier air. It should also mix up the air a little bit more to keep that fog at bay for your Thursday. One change we'll see tomorrow, though, is I think we get a little better coverage of some showers and thunderstorms. We may have a couple here around early in the morning, but the better coverage definitely arriving in the afternoon. And that will coincide, of course, with usually the 2, 3, and 4 o'clock hour, where you see there some of those storm clusters starting to fire up. They'll be slow movers, so putting down some locally heavy rain as they usually do. And then once we get to Thursday night, a lot of that will begin to fall apart. And then we're going to be watching a very interesting setup for Friday. Now, the Storm Prediction Center is not going full-on gangbusters with big-time severe storm potential on Friday. They only have areas to the west of us in a level 1 out of 5. But I think this is a setup worth watching, and this is really going to depend on what happens Friday morning. But indications right now, and before we leave you at 9:30, we're going to check back in because we will get a brand new run of Future Track here in about the next 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm kind of curious to see if this scenario holds, where in the afternoon we start developing thunderstorms right in this area right here in eastern Iowa. Remember, I've always said, if you want severe weather in the Quad Cities, you want thunderstorms to develop either in Des Moines or just to the east of Des Moines in eastern Iowa. And that is the scenario that our morning run of Future Track is doing here. It's exploding those storms Friday afternoon and evening right here in eastern Iowa, the prime zone to get very strong storm activity into the Quad Cities by Friday evening. And you're looking at the shape of this line too. That is a bow echo signaling the potential for some very strong winds to come through. So we're going to watch that, and we'll see if, again, this updated Future Track run that comes in about the next 5 to 10 minutes still has that. But this morning's run not only had the bow echo in the evening, but it had another one coming in later at night, likely in a decaying mode. But if we get those repeated rounds of storms, we could be talking about a flash flood threat heading into Friday night, early Saturday morning. Again, as you see there, the Storm Prediction Center only has us in a 1 out of 5. But this is likely going to change in the days ahead. We haven't hoisted up a weather impact alert yet. We'd like to see a little bit more consistency, but we may be able to do that perhaps as early as this evening, if not first thing tomorrow. So Friday is going to be our day to watch for some stronger and more widespread storm activity. Another thing I checked in on yesterday was, what are our river levels doing? I know we've had some flooding on the Wapsie lately. It doesn't take much to do that. We've had some other tributary rivers of the Mississippi River getting a little higher. Well, our river level here for the Mississippi is actually up. Normally, it's about 7.3 feet this time of year. That's the historic normal. But if you look at the current level, it's at 12 feet, about as high as it was this spring. Now, we have not seen any river flooding on the Mississippi River at all this year. We avoided it this spring. Flood stage is 15 feet, and as you can see there on the graph, we have not exceeded that. We've barely come close this spring. But here we are, as of today, we're at 12 feet, so that river is elevated. It's not flooding, it's not beyond flood stage, but it is elevated. And what that means is, if we get ourselves in a situation where we get some very heavy rainfall, like that possible scenario on Friday going into Saturday morning, we may see a very quick rise on that river, and we may have to talk about some minor flooding heading into the upcoming weekend. So we're going to keep a very, very close watch on this pattern. As we've seen with storms here the last couple of days, they are loaded with water. The corn sweat is maximizing this time of year, and that moisture level is going to remain very high heading into the upcoming weekend as these clusters of storms work their way through. They're also going to have a lot of heat to work with too, so that combination of high moisture, high heat means lots of storm energy potentially sitting around here on Friday, something we'll keep very, very close tabs on. We'll have a couple of those storms left over as we go into Saturday morning, followed by dry skies for Sunday. That will be the weekend's best. And then we'll have a little more heat coming our way next week before another strong cold front comes in on Wednesday. And as I showed you on the 14-day this morning, look at that big cool down coming in later next week. We're talking highs only in the low 80s for a few days, much lower humidity, and then that will start to creep back in as it usually does heading into beyond the following weekend. So things are expected to stay a little active here for the next several days. Again, we will keep a very close watch on what could possibly go down here on Friday. Just wanted to give you that first heads up that we are starting to see some signs that things could get a little messy and perhaps a little busy around here. Let's go over the couple of questions that we had this week. There were some really good ones. I want to start with the one today. And actually, I kind of left it to the guys at the desk here, the guys and gals, I should say. Ava was the person that had the question for me today. And actually, I thought this was really cool. I've never heard of this myth or this old wives' tale before. And here it is. So apparently, Ava was told when she was younger that before it rains, the leaves on the trees turn upside down, or they bend and expose the bottom half of the leaf. And that's supposedly a sign that rainfall is on the way. So I had to cue in our friends at the University of Illinois Extension office, some of the arborists there, I am not a tree expert, but they are. And there have been a couple of studies that have been done on this, and it turns out they only turn that way because of, what do you think? It's not the rain, it's not the humidity, but it is something else associated with rain and storms in general. It's the wind. So the leaves appear to curl upward because of the wind change, the change in direction. So leaves typically, when they form, they're very aerodynamic. They kind of lean toward the predominant or the main direction of the wind as they're developing and as they exist during the summer. What is that direction? It's usually south and southwest. That's kind of what they're optimized for. They want to optimize the amount of sun they get, and that's typically what they lean into. However, when you have a storm moving through, oftentimes you get a brief and very quick switch in wind direction, followed by an increase in those winds with the storm. That in turn bends over the leaves and, yeah, turns them on their backside and makes them point in the opposite direction. So it is a myth. There's no scientific evidence to support the claim that the leaves turn themselves upright or over to either catch more rainfall or maximize the moisture they're going to pick up. No, it's all due to the wind. And that was an excellent, excellent question. The other question we had too this week dealt with the humidity. And why does it feel so nasty when we have such high humidity along with the heat? We always say it's not the heat, it's the humidity. So we're going to go over this explainer, which I do every summer because it's some really good information and it really makes you think for a second. So this is the scenario. This is your typical July summer-like day here in the Quad Cities. What we always track is the dew point, and I'll show you why here coming up in a second. But given this scenario, we have a dew point of 70 degrees. That's pretty high. That's noticeable. It is a humid day. What does our body do to try and cool us down? The minute you start exerting yourself, you start to sweat. Your sweat glands go like crazy under your armpits and your face, kind of behind your neck, in that area, your forehead. What your body is trying to do is it's trying to evaporate, use the process of evaporation to cool you down. The easiest way I can explain that, think of when you're in the shower and as soon as you shut that water off and you open up your shower curtain, you are freezing. You can't get that towel around you fast enough. Why? Because the water on your skin is evaporating and it's cooling your internal body temperature down. That's why you're feeling chilly. When the air is full of water, when you're outside on this kind of a day, your sweat process, it doesn't work. The air is already full of water, so of course it's not going to accept the sweat that's on your skin. That sweat can't evaporate. It just sits on your skin and it makes you and everybody else feel downright miserable. So that's why the dew point is such an important number for us to measure your comfort level. The higher that is, the less likely any of that water is going to evaporate. If you have a lower dew point though, say 55 degrees, that sweat on your skin is going to be able to leave your skin and evaporate much more efficiently. It's going to cool you down. Your body's natural air conditioning process works a heck of a lot better when the dew point is at 55 versus 70 degrees. It makes all the difference in the world. So here's the other question that kind of gets attached to that. Why do we say that it's humid when we're not talking about the humidity? We're talking about the dew point. Why do we use the dew point anyway? Well, here's an example. So in the winter, you can have 100% relative humidity with a temperature of 34 degrees. Do you go outside in the winter when it's 34 degrees out and say, oh my goodness, it's humid. This is really uncomfortable. I'm sweating like crazy. You don't. So humidity really is not a great tool or a great measurement of what your comfort level is, of how much water is packed into that air. The dew point is a much, much better measurement. Look at this difference here in the summer. You could have relative humidity of 49% in the summer. And you think, well, 49%, that's not bad. It's not half, it's close to half, it's not even over half. It shouldn't be humid, right? Wrong. Look at the dew point, 72 degrees. So that's more moisture that the air can hold. The warmer that temperature gets, the more moisture the air can hold, and that's why the dew point is a much, much better measurement of how uncomfortable or how comfortable things are going to be as you step outside. Those were some really great questions, and I thank everyone who submitted those. We've taken a number of your questions, by the way, that I expand on during the week, right from this segment here, Ask Andrew Live, because during the week, I get a little bit more time to get creative, put some graphics together that go along with those, and do a little bit of a deeper dive into those explanations. So keep those questions coming. If you don't text them here and you want to submit it later, it's as easy as going to WQ80.com. You hit the weather tab. There's an Ask Andrew link. You can submit it right there. It comes right to my inbox, and away we go with answering that question. We'll add it to the queue. So I hope everyone has had a great week so far. It's Wednesday already. We're halfway through the week, and now we're ready to turn the tables and get your questions submitted here. So I'm going to be going through the chat. Our awesome folks on the digital desk are also helping us out this morning. We've got Alec, our digital director, is on with us this morning, and also we have Brandy, our director, back there in the booth helping us out. Thank you, everyone, for your help this morning as we get this underway here. So first on the docket here with the question, I believe it's Lennon asking if there's rain coming on Friday for Mercado on 5th. Yes. Again, I want to keep checking back in with this feature track run because we're going to get the new one any moment. Do you want to go back? Should we look at it right now and see if it's come in yet? Let's go ahead and do that and see if we have this same situation or scenario playing out. And I don't think we've gotten the new one quite yet. Looks like we're still on the previous one. But yeah, Mercado on 5th typically takes place in the evening. That's going to be on Friday. And if we get this scenario here with this line of storms coming through, that is not going to be good. So if you plan on taking part in Mercado this Friday or anything else outside this Friday, you will want to stay very close to us here, not only this morning, but also this evening and into tomorrow morning and tomorrow evening up until this storm comes in. Because if this holds, if we continue to see this solution dominate here, that is going to be quite a wind threat for us here in the Quad Cities, given all of this heat energy sitting around. So Friday plans, keep it close. Keep an eye on the forecast. It could get very dicey around here. We've got our good friend Billy from Clinton also has a question for us this morning. And by the way, shout out to Billy because yesterday he gave me the rainfall total from Clinton. More than an inch of rain from just a couple rounds of storms that they had yesterday morning. So he won the rainfall lottery there. Congratulations. I wish I had a prize to give you, but even my tip jar is empty because it's been going through a rough time with all the heat lately. But Billy's got a question regarding hurricanes, and he wanted to know which hurricane specifically has caused the worst tornado outbreak. What category was the storm? And does a category matter with the hurricane when it comes to the potential for tornadoes? Thank you for your time, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you, Billy. We appreciate that. So I can tell you with confidence, as we go back to 2004, the year that I graduated high school. Man, I feel old. 2004, we had Hurricane Ivan. That hurricane, of course, making landfall, I believe it was Florida. That storm holds the record for the most number of confirmed tornadoes spawned by any one storm. And those tornadoes were not limited to Florida, by the way. Those tornadoes were from Florida all the way up to Pennsylvania. And you want to know what the total was? 120 tornadoes associated with that hurricane. Now, when it comes to category strength, does that have anything to do with the number of tornadoes? Not really. With hurricanes, you have to remember they're spinning. They have a lot of spin with them. And as they do spin, they tend to enhance what we call that wind shear. And the wind shear is the spin in the atmosphere that you need to get tornadoes going. And it could be something as simple as a heavy shower that could create a tornado when you have a hurricane involved with this because there's so much spin going on. You can also get some stronger tornadoes with that too, including EF2 or greater, because of all that spin. So it doesn't matter whether it's a tropical storm, whether it's a Category 3 hurricane, or even a Category 5 hurricane, all of those will be capable of producing tornadoes. I think the biggest thing that drives that tornado threat in terms of, how many tornadoes are you going to get is where that thing tracks, and also the terrain too. The terrain plays a huge role when it comes to hurricanes. And remember, that's one of the main reasons why they weaken when they get on land. They get over the terrain. We add some friction with the terrain and the storm itself, not to mention they lose their energy source, which is the warm waters of the Gulf and the Atlantic. So keep that in mind. Great question, though. Yeah, Hurricane Ivan is the one back in 2004 that holds the record for the most number of tornadoes caused by a hurricane. And I'm kind of curious to see the track of that. So it was a very long-lived storm, obviously. I mean, it caused catastrophic, widespread damage. At its peak intensity here, it had winds of 165 miles an hour, which is just insane, absolutely insane. So this actually made landfall in Alabama, so kind of close to Florida, but you can see, yeah, definitely had a big storm associated with it. So thanks to Lee for that awesome question. Marcus, I know this guy. I'll be seeing him later tonight. He's asking, why don't gases in the atmosphere separate out according to mass? Oof, that is a more beefy one. So we have all these different. He's really giving me a run for my money this morning. We have all these different molecules. We have oxygen, we have nitrogen, we have hydrogen. Why don't they all kind of separate themselves and group themselves because of their weight? Well, the best explanation I can give is think about how much movement there is in our atmosphere. It's like a body of water, right? It's kind of like the ocean. Think of the waves in the ocean. There's constant stirring, there's constant mixing. I've only been on the ocean a couple of times, but I can tell you I have yet to see a still portion of ocean. There's always some kind of wave action. There's some kind of turbulence going on. So there's always something mixing. And it's the same story with our atmosphere, whether it be the jet stream or a front coming through, an area of low pressure, an area of high pressure. Something is always stirring that atmosphere, keeping things well mixed. So that's why we don't see those groups, those different molecules, if you will, or different elements group off into their own. They actually just keep mixing and keep stirring. It's like a giant vat of mixing brownie batter together, just constantly mixing so that things don't separate. Great question. I'll see you later. We have Michelle here saying that her grandma had always said that about the leaves too, about them flipping over being a sign that it was going to rain. So yeah, I mean, I had never honestly heard that before. Ava was the first person to tell me that. And I said, really? I've never heard anybody say that before. So I even learned something new. Michelle also says, does higher dew points usually mean that there will be more storms? Yes. So higher dew points means you have higher amounts of storm energy and more moisture. You are likely going to see some more widespread storm activity. Remember early in the spring, we usually have a tough time sometimes forecasting when the storms are going to hit because we need to reach a crucial number on the dew point scale. You got to have dew points of like 55 degrees or higher to get storms. If you don't have the dew point of at least 55 or higher, storms usually are going to have a really hard time getting organized and getting together. It's just not enough storm energy, if you will, to get things cooking. Great question with Michelle. We have Sarah from Mercer County asking, the Mississippi River level appears higher than normal for this time of year. What's going on? And are any local river metros going to experience flooding this month? That is a possibility, especially when we are looking at what the river is doing right now. It is elevated. I can tell you, remember last year, looking at some of the river levels, this was definitely higher last year. It was not 12 feet. I think it was actually closer to 20, and I'm actually going to go back and look here. So the Mississippi River last year was at 20.14 feet. We had flooding going on last summer. Do you remember Red, White, and Boom? It was canceled. They moved it to, I think, September. It was much later in the year. I remember that. So we're not as high as we were last year. Flood stage, remember, is 15 feet. We're sitting at 12 feet here for the Mississippi River in Rock Island, and normally, on an average year, this time of the year, we'd be at about 7.3. So we were there quite consistently for much of the early summer months, but now that we're getting these heavier bouts of rainfall, not just in the QC, but also areas to the north of the QC, we're starting to see that number climb. In fact, the latest reading has it at 12.2 feet, or actually, if you round it up, 12.3 feet. So it's climbed a little bit more, and that's likely because of the heavy rain that we got in the metro yesterday with some of those thunderstorms. So when the river is this high, yeah, we're not at flood stage, but it doesn't take much to get you up there, and it will be a little bit more vulnerable here in the next week or two until we begin to dry out again. But the fact that we have the rainfall in the forecast and the potential for that rain to be heavy is a little bit concerning that we could be dealing with river flooding. It's almost impossible to predict in advance because a lot of this is based off small-scale features. If you look at the rainfall forecast, this is for those 2 rounds of thunderstorms. This goes until roughly Friday evening, so this is not counting what's going to happen Friday night. This run stops at about 7 Friday evening, so it only shows one round of storms coming in. It's not showing the second one. But if we get a widespread rain that could potentially pile up to 2 to 3, maybe more than that in that time period, we will likely be looking at some rise in that river level, and we may be talking about some flooding as early as this weekend. But I just noticed that the other day, and I'm like, you know what? That is definitely way above where we typically are for this time of year, and it's thanks in part to the recent heavy rains that we've gotten kind of in this stuck pattern of these daily shower and storm chances. So I'm not guaranteeing we're going to see flooding, but I think it is something that we're really going to keep at the front of our mind here as we're forecasting the next several days, because it's not going to take much to take this 12.3 feet to get it up to 15. All you need are a couple of decent rounds of heavy rain either here in the metro or just to the north and northwest of us, and that could become a real possibility. So if you have some boating interests on the Mississippi River in the next couple of weeks, keep an eye on this, and we'll be doing that as well. We'll let you know if that goes up any higher. Great question from Sarah there. Brittany's wondering if Alpha is going to have some storms on Friday. We think that most, if not all, hometowns are going to have some rain here on Friday. This is going to be a little bit of a stronger disturbance that's going to be coming in. That should ensure we get a little bit better coverage of showers and storms. So pay attention here. This is the new run of Future Track that I told you we've been waiting for, that we usually get around this time. So it still has this idea that there's going to be a good cluster of storms sitting to the west of us there in eastern Iowa. And you can see it's still getting into the metro here at about 5:30. It's not as long or as big as the cluster was with the last model run, but it is still here. But notice what's happening too. We're getting a good lineup of showers and thunderstorms coming through nearly all Friday evening into Saturday morning here. And those continue to march on. In fact, with this new run, give me 1 second. We're going to do this on the fly. I might be able to extend this a little bit further into Saturday now. Let me see if I can get up to at least 6 a.m. Saturday. It may or may not let me do that. We're going to find out here in just a moment. Will it let me do it? Yes, it will. Okay. So, yeah, look at Saturday morning. Repeated rounds of showers and thunderstorms. That's a very heavy rain signal right there. So we're going to have to keep a very close watch on that. But, yeah, it does look like Friday evening into Friday night, this is a really good setup for repeated rounds of heavy rain and some potential severe weather getting mixed into this as well. Let me go back to our rainfall potential tracker, because this should be updated as well with that newer run. And let's see if it's going to load here. Give me 1 second. Let it kind of get its act together here and see if we can get in the latest run data. Again, we're doing this live on the fly. That's kind of one of the advantages of the Ask Andrew Live, if you will, as we get to look at this newer data as it comes in. So yeah, you can see there's definitely going to be the potential for these heavier pockets of rain that could establish itself to more than 3 inches in spots. But we're going to really keep an eye on Friday. That could be the day when things get busy around here. We've got Ryan asking, do you think that Friday's outlook will get upgraded to a slight or even enhanced risk? I don't think we're going to see an enhanced risk, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Friday upgraded to a 2 out of 5, especially west of the Quad Cities. We'll see how far east that extends. We may get that update as early as this afternoon. The next update from the Storm Prediction Center comes out early this afternoon for day 3, which would be Friday. Lastly, we have Michelle here. Our last question coming in hot. Does feathering of the clouds means there's going to be winds? My grandma always said that when they look like feathers, it's going to be windy. Yes, that does indicate some stronger winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And depending on the setup, some of those winds can make their way down to the ground, and it can absolutely indicate that you can have a gustier day ahead. It can also indicate too, if you're talking about thunderstorm clouds, they can rise so quickly that the top of the clouds can feather off, and that signals very strong wind shear, and also the fact that those storms are going up very rapidly. So there's a couple of different things you can denote looking at that feathery appearance to the clouds. One, what the winds are doing, and two, how fast and how strong those storms are going up in our skies. Another round of great questions. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. The question we'll have on Monday, I've already picked it out, is regarding the situation that we have with the flash flooding in Texas, the whole cloud seeding situation. Did that play a role? What we know in terms of that, we're going to talk about coming up on Monday for Ask Andrew during GMQC. But for now, I'll let you guys get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow morning on GMQC. Take care.
Continue with us and watch free now on the 8 Plus app everywhere you stream.